as we were recording the audio, I'd take photos, I'd bring a camera crew in, we would do all this crazy stuff. Like you'd take a weird photo and say, caption this. And then you'd post that on Facebook and you'd get like 6,500 comments.
You're listening to Voices of Value, a selection of valuable insights designed to help you get more out of your professional and personal life through simple and easy to adopt life lessons. If you're keen to enjoy a better quality of life at work and at home, sit back and join the conversation with your hosts, Peter Kakos and Rik Rushton.
Welcome to another episode of Voices of Value. Peter Kakos here with my great mate, Ricky Rushton. Welcome, Rick.
What a big week it's been, Pete, and we're blessed again to have another voice of value to bring to our absolute loyal subscribers. And this particular person we bring to the microphone can give us a lot of help with our social media, our influencing ability, the ability to stay very digital, even if we're analog like you and I are, to stay very, very much on top of it. But our guest is somebody who had a massive profile in the mainstream media. For those of you who were avid fans of that iconic Channel 9 program Getaway, I'm sure you'll know the name Jules Lund very, very comfortably. 2Day FM, so radio, TV, could have very comfortably continued along that plane and earned a very good income, but realised working for good, great companies wasn't as exciting as building a great company. So he's actually left that safety net, if you will, of that regular media check, Pete, to go into the wild, wonderful world of setting up Tribe, an amazing organisation that started with a handful of people, now has 70 plus employees across. We're in the headquarters HQ of Tribe Melbourne. We could be doing this from the headquarters of Tribe in Sydney. We could be doing it from London. That would be nice. The Ashes. Could be doing it from New York. We could go see a Broadway show. Manila, not too sure. But Tribe is a global conglomerate, and it really does fuel the passion of this man. Jules Lund, welcome to the microphone. Thank you so much for the gift of your time. Know that you don't do this much at all in this day and age. Thank you for joining us on Voices of Value.
That was an incredible introduction from you both.
And the time we have left?
Yeah, that's right. I loved it. I can't top that. That was incredible. No notes. You just spat it out of your brain, which I haven't seen. I've done a few interviews in my time. That was a good start.
Thank you. Yeah, it goes downhill from here, but
yep, I can imagine.
We started with a high, and that's what it's all about. But Pete and I have been really just fortunate. We've been just talking a little bit off air about the calibre of people we've had, but you were one that was on the radar from a long way out, not because of your media profile and not just because of Tribe, but because Pete's passion, as is one of mine too, is in the field of contribution, and your work with Jim Steins and Reach, and that's how we first met. We were at a Reach program, and and we've sat on a panel at a media thing as well. But just to work with Reach is interesting. So I know, a lot of guests we have on are for my passion. This is one that for this man to my right hand side's passion. So, Pete.
Yeah, I'd love to kick off with that. And Tribe's obviously a big story now, Jules, and what you're doing is incredible. And I was just mentioning about how there was an article online about how Tribe ambushed a $2 million industry.
Billion, I think they said. They dropped billion.
And now you're a $2 billion man. I think that's something that's going to come out.
Oh, that was in some magazine, tabloid garbage. I mean, the irony of saying that I've got a significant piece of a $2 billion industry. The irony is not only do I not have any of that, but it's an $8 billion industry anyway.
So. How'd the kids go knowing that their dads are?
Oh, mate, they all think we've got too much money because of some crappy tabloid magazine garbage. But therein lies the joys of traditional media, things that we've just accepted over the years.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And we're going to get to that and talk a little bit about Getaway and maybe favourite destinations and things. But I think, first of all, and when I first met you as well, Jules, you hit the stage of a Reach Foundation event, which just blew my mind, and what you were doing for teenagers and so forth. And along my journey, I've met a lot of those teenagers and have had their lives changed and so forth, even to the extent of saying that Reach saved their life, which is a pretty big statement. And no doubt you would have heard many, many more stories. Tell us about how you got introduced to Reach and what that really means to you these days.
Well, Reach is a foundation that's been around for 25 years. They had a reunion on Friday night, and it started by Jim Steins, who was an AFL footballer, and Paul Curry, who was a film director, and both had worked with teenagers They were only young themselves, 25 and 27, I think. And Jim had worked with, young people through sports camps. Paul had worked with young people through drama. And both of them just, didn't do the traditional type of self-development. And, 25 years ago, things like mental health or even talking about how to make the most out of your life, there just wasn't even a language for it, especially not at school. Even talking about feelings openly was unique. You had scouts or you had Sunday school at church, but there wasn't really a youth organisation per se. And so they tried to do something really innovative and authentic to who they were. And it just struck a chord. So they went out to schools to try to encourage a 5-week program, a couple of hours every week, get the kids around. And they were collecting people from all walks of life. So Jim was a celebrity at that stage. So, he'd be talking at secondary schools or even juvenile detention centres, or he'd be working with programs that were helping kids that were living on the street. And then also he had done rounds as a teacher. So he'd done them at De La Salle College in Malvern, where I was there as a Year 9 student. And he came in to run a workshop with Paul to promote the first course. At that stage of my life, I was a pretty ratty kid. And so I made it very difficult for him to run the workshop. But there was enough within it that really called out to me and made me, I suppose, take notice of where I was focusing my attention and how destructive it was being to not only me but the people around me. And they just talked about being a positive influence without sounding wanky. And also Jim had a real go at me because I was trying to disrupt the session, and I really respected that. And he just spoke to me not as a kid. So I turned up to that course, and that was 25 years ago. And in that course was, 30 kids. And as I say, some of them were living on the streets. Others were addicted to heroin. There were kids from really expensive private schools with absentee fathers that are just working too hard. There were kids from psychiatric units, and this melting pot all came together. And, we would talk about our feelings, and it, you didn't have to be very different to be very different. And it just, in its essence, it was young people, safe space. You can't say this stuff at school, right? How are you feeling? How's everything going at home? And you'd share those things and everyone would really connect with you. And because there was an increased bond, and also you had people a bit older than us who were positive. So Jim had his model girlfriend at the time, Jackie Tarabay, and Jim's sister would come out, and there was all these just cool people that were a bit older, and they're positive, they're like, good on you. And it was just a weird sort of thing. So those two things combined, the trust and safety of being able to express your real feelings, and someone a bit older that was positive, just created something that has grown to, work with over, it would have to be over 1 million young people have been affected just in this country. And so, through that course, I remember they chose someone to help organise a fund run that was raising money. And they voted for me to lead that. And I was the kid that was just ripping things apart, and they imparted this responsibility on me. And it was here to run around the Albert Park Lake, and we're just overlooking it now, and raise some money and, get some awesome foursome guys down there and all these footballers, and, it was a sausage sizzle. And I just couldn't believe that people were looking to me like I could actually do something. And that trust that they imparted and invested in me changed my whole perception of myself. And then Jim just continued on that track and kept investing in me, and he built the person that I am today purely by helping me see the things that he saw in me that I just simply as a teenager couldn't see myself. And so, as I say, all of those people, it's literally about, hey, you can do this. No, I can't. You listen to all the voices in your head, and then you just have someone who's nurturing but challenging you, drive you to a place where not only do you step out and take that risk, but if it's a positive experience, you just your whole perception and your whole sense of identity completely flips. You believe that you can be bigger than you're being at secondary school.
And that's the essence of mentoring, isn't it? Seeing much more in you than you can see for yourself, giving you a safe environment for you to explore that. And then when you get the result, that compels you now to want to give back as well. And that's sort of seemingly where you're at. We've been fortunate, Pete, to interview Wayne Schwass, who's an amazing operative in this space of mental well-being, or he calls it emotional well-being, not mental health. And he talks about 3 things are important. Number one, a safe environment where people can actually have these discussions. That's what Reach was clearly doing a quarter of a century ago. Number 2, a pathway for people to break through wherever they're sort of at the moment to a safe place. And number 3, once they've got there, the empowerment to give back. And it sounds like Jim was all over that, as were all of the people involved in Reach at the time.
And Reach is continuing to grow. Without for those who don't know, Jim Steins, is a founder and a mentor, passed away. So I think it was about, it might have been 6 years ago. Jim passed away after his body just being absolutely riddled with tumours. So, I think he had 26 by the time he passed away, and every, like blood, skin, bone, organ, brain. Like I think he nailed the whole lot of where you can have cancer. And so, like having a force of nature like that that's driving an organisation. But we went to the reunion on Friday night and seeing the young people in the spirit, it's no different than when it started. Because, in its, as I said, in its simplicity, it doesn't need gym. No. It needs a safe space and people a little bit older who are positive. And you can transform lives. You can help surface greatness in anyone with just a couple of really basic fundamental support, which is like has been in generations around a village to raise a child.
Yes,
like that sense of community. You have some elders. You have people. That sense of mentoring has sort of been disconnected and broken a little bit.
Must have been incredible, man, Jim, the late, great Jim Steins. And I want to talk a little bit about the doco that you did. That must have been incredibly hard for you. You had one of the most endearing relationships, and you could see that. And most people would well and truly remember that. That must have been incredibly hard thing to do.
Well, ironically, it was really easy and it was fun. It was awesome. So I've always been a content creator, and so I would be taking him to, a hospital appointment or a checkup or a scan or something, and so I just had my little Canon camera, like a digital camera in my pocket, and so we'd just be laughing, and I'd just be filming stuff, and then after a while, I just sort of started to collect so much of it, and then Paul Curry, the co-founder, who's a film director, he goes, "We should be doing something and pulling this together." And wow, I mean, Paul is a phenomenal. He's just how he told that story, and it's all him. Like I'm a part of it, and I'm driving the story of it, but how he layered it, and it really is just, regardless of football, it's just a stunning story about someone. And what I loved about it was, we got to watch it with him and his family, and then he died. So it was like he got to go to his own funeral. He just had all his friends interviewed, celebrating him, and he got to sit there with all of those people. It was phenomenal. Like, it was incredible. And the process of celebrating through that was, for me and Paul, his, 2 best friends, what a special thing. So ironically, it wasn't hard. I think it made it easier. And even, the support that I put into, looking out for him and during that time, and there were horrible moments, just watching him in absolute agony, like absolute agony. I just felt so privileged to be in the box seat. I just, because when someone's really sick, being far away from them and not knowing is horrendous. Being in the trenches and fighting with them is easy, much easier, I reckon. Having said that, I did have to watch him drink his own piss and all sorts of other ridiculous things. He was such he was so determined
He was looking for everything,
to
wasn't he?
fight cancer. He had read every piece of research. He literally tried everything. And one of those things was drinking his own urine. And then he went off to Jakarta and there was some cigarette smoke therapy. And you never know, something could have worked. But tell you what, it did take 26 tumours. And some of these tumours were the size of they were taking out of him. You know, you'd have ones the size of a golf ball. There was one in his back that was the size of a grapefruit.
Wow.
Was it true, Jules, that as he was virtually drifting off, he rallied one last time, and his wife said to him, "You've done enough now. You can go." Like he did, like he'd heard that. You know, the way I hear it, I don't know if it's right. You were there, but it was almost like he's heard that he's gone, so he's not. I'm going to go one more time. It's almost like he just wanted to try one last time before she said, "Look, this is enough."
It got really. You know, when you start to cut in around your brain, then it started to go the quality of life. So trying to figure out how you operate on those things. And there was a great lesson in there from him in those days around, just being addicted to being busy. And so one of his great sort of revelations or awakenings through it was just, this sacrifice of how hard we work and what that really truly costs. And, he was a very busy guy. He used to talk to me about his diary. If he didn't have something on a weeknight in his diary, then he just put something in there. But what, he failed to see in his own words were you don't write in, go for a walk with the kids, have a pasta, so he, there were times that he sort of snapped out of that and really pulled back and spent such beautiful quality time. They went on some great holidays in those final years. And, and ironically, he, by the time he finally bought himself, because he was a fair tight ass. He was Irish, so he came out here. I think he still had the same two bob in his pocket that he arrived with. He just didn't spend much. He just kept investing it into property and stuff. He finally started to spend something, and he bought a Porsche Cayenne. And literally a month later, he had a tumour near his eye and lost his part of his sight, and he couldn't drive it. So it's just like here we collect all this money. If you don't enjoy it, if you don't spend it on yourself, right? He had this beautiful car just sitting in the driveway. Like it's just a great reminder that do not. Yeah, it's great to save it and put it away for a rainy day and build up to something, but you really got to enjoy life as you go. Otherwise, you miss out on those special things. And he definitely deserved to fang around in a Cayenne because he had made enormous sacrifices.
Yes.
While we're on life lessons, and there'd be a lot from Jim, no doubt. Jules, you're seen, I think, from the outside looking in, you've got such an incredible determination, just attitude to life. And every time you see Jules Lund, he's got a smile on his face. He's up and about, and that's so it's a real credit to you. What are some of the life lessons that you live by, whether they be from Jim or someone else or other mentors that you've had throughout your life? But what are the things that you go to? What if the Jules Lund book of being up and about?
There's contradictions within it, and if I was to be truly honest, there's confusion because they fight each other. So I say, I don't want to look back on my life with regret, and so I want to create something great, and I want to make the sacrifices to build something. And to push myself and to make the most of my life, to express my passions, to express my gifts, to live out my potential. So there's all that drive, right, which is like, Jim died, other people die, life is short, go and have a crack.
Yeah.
Then in doing that, it takes you away from what is truly important, right? And so that's where my conflict is because if I'm sitting there in front of my kids on a Sunday and I'm going into the office now, And if they would actually ask me, why are you going to the office? I'd say, well, I'm going in the office to, work on this company because we can't afford not to give it our all. We have this huge opportunity. All right, what happens then if the company's a success? Well, after a few years, and that leads to the ability to be able to maybe sell it to earn a bit of money. Okay, what are you going to do with the money? Well, with all of this money, I'm going to buy freedom. All right, what does freedom look like? Well, freedom looks like just being able to enjoy Saturday with my kids and just going for a walk around the park. And my kids going, you can do that now.
Yeah.
Why go the long way round? And so
it's almost like go to the trophy store, buy the trophy, and say Jules Lund, great golfer, and rather than pick up the clubs and go and spend 4 hours and
So if you would ask me, like, what are my life lessons, or what is the message I most try to convey to people is, I know how to achieve things. I know how to discipline myself. I know how to apply myself. I'm not frightened by not knowing stuff, right? So, I change every 5 years. I change to a completely different industry. If I'm excited by a new opportunity, I just start again. I have no idea, and I just move into it and lean into the darkness. But it's probably, to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, I live in a constant state of uncertainty and tension because I like to just push, and that's Jim's fault because Jim, it's not really. I think that's why we connected. He saw me as a 15-year-old, always just unsatisfied. That hunger, and that's where we really connected. But he just, you got your comfort zone where you can just relax. And he just always said, oh, it's out of this. It's all the good stuff's on the other side of that line. Like, just stretch and reach and scare yourself. And because he just did that in such unbelievably big ways. Like, people tell me stories like, after he won the Brownlow. So not only was he Brownlow medalist against all odds because, he came out here at 18 as an Irish kid, not even knowing the sport, but becoming a Brownlow medalist, but also, 244 consecutive games. So he played 12 years without missing a game through busted back and fingers and ruck, right? So it's pretty amazing. But after he won the Brownlow, people have told me that they saw him down Beach Road just running at 6 a.m, just flogging himself, right?
Incredible.
Still training. And he used to go over to this spot, I can't remember what it's called, but over in Dublin, but I think they've spread some of his ashes there. But every Christmas he'd go to his mum and say, Mum, you've got to pick me up, right, at exactly 11:45 a.m, because if you don't, I will die, right? And he would start running up this mountain that was just ice and sleet and nothing but wind, and he would just be slogging up this thing to get to the top and hope that his mum was there to collect him. And he would just, like, kill himself. Like that. Having that type of spirit and as a mentor, you can't help but always go, I wonder how hard I could push that. I wonder if I could push that envelope. I wonder if I could tackle that big, audacious goal.
And that's what we say, isn't it? We don't necessarily push ourselves hard enough in the gears we know to find the gears we don't even know we've got, because we don't actually put ourselves out there, but it looks like he was looking for it.
And so what's the point of it all? Yeah. So, and I ask you guys, you speak to people that live large, that have, and when is enough? And is it all ego? I mean, I know there's spirit in there, like you express, and I think there is something really worthy in going, now you've been given some gifts, how to figure it out. Let's see how much you can push it. How do you have that balance? How do you be big and present at the same time? So you're future focused, right? Because that seems to be what it requires, because if you're not competitive and giving you all, someone else is. Like, it's hard enough. Yeah. But yet, how do you stay in the present? I find those are the people that I admire. Those people that can deal with the stress, do the big things without it eating away at them.
Yeah, we've often talked about it because, for us, it's always about interviewing people and finding out what they do, because in amongst the mix, there's no right or wrong, not one size fits all. But clearly what we've found over the journey thus far of a year of doing podcasting, of more than a quarter of a century of knowing each other, is that when you're around really good people, there's three things that seem to unite them. Number one, They've got a very clear vision of what they're trying to achieve. Number 2, they're in a mad, screaming hurry to get there. Number 3, they understand it's not their life; it just funds their lifestyle. So and it's always internal civil war for them. They don't know. There's times when Dad's got to go hard, but Dad will make that up to you for 3 weeks in the year when we're not going to be near a phone, and we're going to have no Wi-Fi reception, and we're going to be reintroduced to. So quality time used to come from quantity time. Now it appears for high achievers that quality time comes from quality experiences with their kids, and it's all about how you set it up and what you value is what we're finding, isn't it?
Very much so. There's a lot of information out there in the world, and I think if you're very clear, as Rik said, on vision, but also you've got your values aligned as well. But you just said the magical thing before, Jules, is you've got to be comfortable when uncomfortable. And so many of us are uncomfortable, and we quickly retreat back into comfort without actually pushing forward. And that freedom may have just been there, but you've come back because you've just stepped a little bit too far out of that sort of comfort zone. So one of the common themes I see, and what Rik and I just enjoy so much about this, is just the certainty and direction. And you just said you change industry, so it's like, you know what, I need to test myself. I mean, you get one life and just go hard and go and do it. And what's the human body really capable of, and what's the human mind really capable of as well? So, but at the same time, then you've got to balance that with family life and children and the day-to-day sort of challenges that sort of go on as well. They're obviously, big things, and that's when it comes down to. That's why I asked the question initially before of attitude, because how do you look at things and see it in it's a fairly relatively grey day out there, but does it really matter? Does it affect our internal world? What the external world is actually doing there? We probably let that affect our internal world a bit too much.
Actually, that's what happened at this function I was just coming from, Pete, where the guy goes, "Gee, it's cold today." I think it's a lot colder 6 feet under. Like and in summer, someone says it's bloody hot. It'd be a lot hotter being in an urn, I would have thought. Like the reality is, get the death notices of any local paper in any major city in the world, go straight to the death notices, and you'd notice 2 things. Number 1, everyone seems to die in alphabetical order. Boom, boom. Thank you, I'm here all week. A tribe. Number 2, everyone there would gladly change places with us to have one more crack at something and to have one more challenge or something. And I think if you know the price you're prepared to pay, at some stage there's a price I won't pay beyond my wife and my kids, but there's another price I'm going to pay at my own expense to throw myself out there, to fall flat on my face, to look like a goose. I don't really have too much of a concern about that because, like you, Jules, I think if someone said to me, "We're about to take all this away from you today and give you this over here," I'm going to go, "All right, bring it on." Like, I'll just take it on. Now, I don't know if I'm going to win or lose, but I'm going to have a go. And it sounds to me like Jim noticed that in you as a 15-year-old kid at school, thinking, let's actually use that energy and focus for good as opposed to disruption, which is what he was doing, and see if we can put him on a path which not only will he grow and improve, but he'll grow and improve a lot of people with him. And that's really tribe in many respects to a degree. So thanks for sharing those stories about Jim Steins, who is, we're very AFL-centric. Our program goes right across Australia and New Zealand and even into the US now. Okay, we're global. Not quite as big as Tribe, but we're global. There'll be people who don't understand, not only did he, as you say, arrive as an 18-year-old kid from Northern Ireland playing Gaelic football, which is not really the same as Australian rules football, he was adjudged the very best player in the competition, our best stadium in the country, if not one of the global, best stadiums in the world, has a room named after him, the Jim Steins room. I always think about that. Could you imagine him growing up as a teenage boy or a young boy in Ireland and thinking someday this is what I'll be renowned for?
Well, if you turn around, that guy standing up at that computer, Sam, is one of our senior engineers, and he, I said, "What are you doing this weekend?" He said, "It's my boy Sam's birthday." No, Will's birthday, unless he's got his son Sam. And I said, "What did he want for his birthday?" He said to go to the footy, the Jim Steins Grill, and how, I mean, Jim would absolutely love hearing that. But you know what I think, you talk about that sense of satisfaction and paying it forward. I certainly have. I mean, I do in certain ways, but when I think about the purpose within what I'm trying to do right now, it isn't very community focused. Tribe is, it's about unlocking the world's creativity. Like, I think everyday people and the pics and clips in their phones can be of value to a brand if only they could have access and purchase them, right? Yep. But they're really just selling fruit juice and toothpaste, and like I'm not changing. I mean, I hope to change the face of advertising with something as disruptive as this. But what really makes me feel good these days are those small moments when I actually just give back, right? And I've been doing bits and pieces, just flirting with it, mentoring younger guys, and it is the quickest way to feel a sense of pride and happiness. It is amazing how hard it is in business to get that feeling, what you have to do for that feeling, and then you could just turn and actually help someone out and invest in them for an hour, and you walk away and you feel so good. It is so easy, that transaction. So for me, and I felt that for Reach for so long, I very much look forward to the rest of my life in taking all the things that I've learned, the entrepreneurial spirit and the courage and that mindset, and actually just doing good. I reckon the whole second half of my life will just be because money and all of those things aren't really, even now when I'm trying to build a company for some money that will lead to freedom to be able to do, those passion projects and something more community focused. But yeah, you just don't get a lot of feeling. I don't get a lot of feeling. Either did Jim. That was the point. He buys the Porsche and goes, that wasn't ever a driver for him anyway with the money. He loved the game and he loved being the best he could be.
But if someone said, can you show me a shortcut here, and you can give it to them, the benefit of your wisdom, and you go, I've just helped that cat, and that cat's really thrilled with that, and you just go, how cool's that?
I'm loving that at the moment. So one of the kids who was in here not long ago, I took him up to a conference, which was Will Connolly, so Egg Boy. Right, This is Will, who hit Fraser Anning over the head with an egg, and I was unconvinced. There was someone that put us in touch because he had been getting a lot of reach out for sponsored posts on his Instagram, because all of a sudden it just went, and it was worth something. And people were offering $5,000 to do a post, and so I brought him in. I said, write down all of the list of the opportunities that you've been offered, and I looked at them and then I said, so what do you want to do? And he goes, I want to be a counsellor. And I just ripped up the page and I just said, right, let's just invest in that. And so 17 years of age, I took him up to a conference called Space, which was up in Byron Bay with 300 just great innovators and fresh thinkers from all walks of life. Magda Sabansky was there, and then there was incredible teachers and psychologists, and Paul Roos and his wife Tammy, and it was just people that were on the short list to go to Mars one way, right? Incredible stories. And he went up there and absorbed it, and he was like the mascot. They absolutely loved him. And, I celebrated him on stage to break down not what he did and whether that was right or wrong. And I think we don't want to create an environment where you're allowed to just attack your politicians, but what he could do with that platform, what was the positive impact that he could have from there. But I've watched him just with a tiny bit of guidance based on what we're talking about, good group of people, safe space for him to go and talk, which he doesn't even feel like sometimes amongst his school group he can do that. And then just having all these amazing sort of mentors and that access, how transformative that has been for someone of that age, that feels amazing. Like watching that and sort of doing the exact same thing Jim did to me. The same type of kid, like literally exactly like me. And to see what you can do if you light that fire under them.
And brilliant. So you've taken the lessons from Reach, brought it into Tribe, done it, right across what you're trying to do across all levels of your entrepreneurship. And I think it's fairly evident when you see it here, Pete, that Jules just lights up when he can talk about a story of giving back.
Yeah. So let's delve into Tribe. It's phenomenal what you've been able to create in a short amount of time. So you took social influencers, you took brands, you managed to put them all together. Talk to us. How did it all start? Where was Jules Lund's mind at in terms of what could be created here? What's possible?
Well, I've always been a storyteller. So I loved, I did graphic design and photography in school. And then when I sort of started to do the Reach stuff, I realised that you could tell stories, and I ran workshops out in secondary schools, like a life coach for 10 years. I was 18 doing it for 18-year-olds, but then I realised I got no life experience. Like, I'm 18, so I went overseas, backpacked for 8 months, and instead of doing the theme parks, I did the talk show circuit. So I went to Sally Jesse Raphael and Ricky Lake and Jerry Springer and Roseanne Barr show and all these things, and just I'd get on TV, right? I'd get in the audience, I'd propose to someone, or I'd yell out, get in an argument with a male prostitute, or all this ridiculous stuff, right? As just as this kid, just Aussie kid with my best mate, just running amok. But I watched those guys and I went, wow, they're like Jerry Springer. I was watching him just going, and I knew how much he was on. And I was like, you're just literally having a blast doing this. So I came back and I thought, I wouldn't mind having a crack at TV. And so I got a kids pilot with Eddie Maguire, and then I won a radio competition, right? And I was just telling that story. I rang up one day. They were saying, what's your claim to fame? And I told the story of the Jerry Springer and all this stuff. And they rang me back and said, you should apply for this competition. So I won this radio comp. From there, that led to an opportunity to do a radio show. And so I wanted to do Reach on air. And so all of the stuff that I was doing in secondary schools, I thought, can I do it on commercial radio? Now, the reality is you can't, because the conversations are far too in-depth. And back then, they were like 3-minute chats. It was a podcast. So I'd called it Dash, which was the 2 dates in your tombstone and not nearly as important as the dash in between. Yep. Make the most of it. What I did was I'd invite in successful people to talk about their dash, like not what they've achieved, but how. And I'd break it down. So it's sort of like a podcast, 20 years too early, because there was nowhere to put it except on 10:30 p.m. one night, and no one was listening, and then you'd go, here's Pink. It just was annoying to have a good conversation. So, Shane Crawford, who just won, and Woe Woden, and all these guys had won Brownlows at the time, and Jesse Martin, who just sailed around the world, and pop stars, and people that created crumpler bags, entrepreneurs, and I just loved it. It was just, pulling it apart and learning from them. What are the challenges? What are the support? Everything that we're talking about today. From there, I realised I wanted to get into TV. There was an opportunity, so I went, getaway. I'm going to go for the best job I can. And then I put that in my journal, and then I spent 12 months and did everything in my power to become the best host I can be. So I did every course in the country for TV presenting, ran out of those, did acting courses, did voiceover courses. I read books on Oprah, biographies. I did memory learning courses. I then hired a proper camera crew, saved 10 grand working at a surf shop, invested in a camera crew, graphic designer, a photographer, and just made this VHS tape that cost me 10 grand in about 10 months. And I produced 250 of these VHSs ready. I'd taped every credits of every show in the country pretty much, and wrote down a database of all the EPs and all that. So I had a hit list, exactly who I had to get into. And then I just got a call out of the blue to say, hey, have you got any footage? There was this guy that I knew, Channel 9 are looking for a host. You got any footage? And I said, I think I got something around here lying. I'd just given birth to this thing. So I sent it, and I gave him 3 copies. I said, for the guys at 9. And within a month I had Getaway. I'd even before the 12-month sort of period, which was just absolute, so much luck, so much work, but so much luck. As they say, preparation meets opportunity. So I did that TV for a while. Then after I moved out of TV and I moved into radio, because Hamish and Andy were leaving their afternoon shift, and they kept ringing me saying, do you want to do radio? And I said, I'm not following up on those guys. They've done pretty good. Yeah. I'll be a lamb to slaughter. But then I went, it, right? Let's just grow some balls, have a crack, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. So did that for a few years, but all my ideas were visual. Right, in radio, I really struggled this time around because I just saw it visually. Every idea. Imagine we did that, and they were like, they can't see it. They said, go and invest that in the social media platforms that no one really cared about 6 years ago in radio. And so I did. And so as we were recording the audio, I'd take photos. I'd bring a camera crew in. We would do all this crazy stuff. Like you'd take a weird photo and say, caption this, and then you'd post that on Facebook, and you'd get 6,500 comments, captioning it. And I was like, what is this thing? And so I got really fascinated, and we managed to do that and build the most engaged Facebook brand page for the radio show Fifi and Jules. And it had as big an online brand as it did on air. Because of that, a lot of brands and media agencies were saying, how did we build this asset that sat on the top of the leaderboard in the trade press, most engaged Facebook brand page ahead of like politicians or KFC or Cricket Australia? And they said, Jules, so I started to consult on how to engage these social tribes. Then influencer marketing started to garner a bit of attention, and they knew that I could create content online. And so I was inundated with sponsored post requests. And I made a couple $100,000 in like 18 months because it was like no one was really doing it, and I didn't even have that big an audience. So I was like, but it was exhausting workflow. So Nike would say jump midair, slow-mo, and post it on Instagram. They'd go to the media agency, sales team, go to my talent agent. And it would just, and they'd say, put this URL in your Instagram post. And I'd say, you can't put URLs in an Instagram caption. Go all the way back down. So I just went, I'm going to create a workflow solution. Like, what is an app that I can see their brief? You guys all get out of the way. If you want to manage it, no worries. But I know what you guys want. I can hear it. But by the time it comes down all these whispers, I got no idea what they have in their mind. So just get out of the way, and you still take your cut. But I just want to, and so I just created an app, and then and that's Tribe basically. But at that time, the Facebook brand page had gone through the floor, so the engagement had changed. I realised you didn't control this audience. Like, you build this community on Zuckerberg's land, and he just changed the locks, right? Yeah. And everyone realised, shit, I've just been investing in all this, and now I've got to pay to speak to my own audience. So since I was building a marketplace for influencers, it was great timing because I went, hang on, those influencers don't own their audience, so don't build it on the reach you get from influencers, build it on their content. And so I flipped the model, right? And it still stands as the only model of its kind on the globe, which is where the brand will post a brief saying, hey, Vegemite, we want to see young mums, spreading in the kitchen for their kids. And mums would go out there and buy Vegemite if they don't already have it, create the content to your direction, and then submit it with a price attached. So the brand has only put a brief in. Now they've got 300 pieces of content, and they pick the ones they love, and it's all done in front of them. And so what happened was, after a while, Vegemite would say, or a brand would say, that content looks good, I want to use it in my advertising. And so after a while they said, hey, I just want some content again. I don't care if the influencer posts it. So we had sort of inadvertently created this stock image library, but on demand, it's branded. So it has Vegemite, not just a spread on toast. And it's shot by your own customers. And it's instant. And so that has become Tribe now, which I'm excited about. The vision that almost all the pics and clips that we use in our advertising, whether that's social ads or banners on a website or even digital out-of-home bus shelters, can be generated by the very consumers it's designed to engage.
Bloody genius. Absolute genius. It's getting me goosebumps. Just
I can see your brain's ticking over here. You're thinking about what can happen here.
I just love it.
This would be a good time to just weave this in, Jules. We've been hit up for the power of this podcast in terms of what we could do with it.
Let's monetize
Influencer. A certain lady that we both know, the beautiful Vivian Ryan, who for our subscribers will remember Viv from episode 31, where she was talking about the power of marketing and how we've got to be better marketers of what we do than doers of it. If you're listening to anything that you're hearing from Jules here, it's about look at the model. And the old saying is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think Jules's mantra is, if it ain't broke, it's probably obsolete. Let's look at how we can bust it apart and repackage it again so that it's got some currency for today. For those listeners out there, Jules, who believe their whole life, their whole identity is linked to building a business and they can't get in their head, how could you build that and then sell it off? What would you say to them?
What do you mean sell it off? As in?
Yeah, so then you sell it off to someone else and then you go off and whether that be...
Do you mean Tribe? Like how do I build Tribe and then sell the company?
Yeah.
Or do you mean selling social posts?
No, how you would sell your company that you've given so much of your time, energy and resource to. Like some people can't let go of that.
I think it's the expression. Once you've expressed it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's what you get. It's who you become. You walk away with having evolved your education. So I don't, like at the end of this, I want to walk away with cash, right? But I've built the thing, right? Like if it's a big Lego house and I've built it, it's the expression of building. It's not having the Lego house.
I get it. So your identity is not linked to Tribe or anything you build. Ultimately, it's the journey of the creativity of it. And now that we've ticked that box, let's go find another box.
And I move on real quick.
Yeah, clearly we got the sense of
like
that.
I did Getaway for 9 years, and I just turn and I probably unless I'm reminded, I rarely think, same as Reach, to a point. Like I just absolutely gorged on Reach for 15 years. Like I cannot tell you how much of my time and energy. And then when Jim passed, I was like, it was just a little bit confronting for a little while. And I'll go back, and I've still got Reach in my own life because all my best friends are from Reach. So we still express the same philosophies, etc. But and this will be the same when it's time. And I've built it and I've done everything I can there, and I've exhausted myself through it. I just move on to the next thing.
And so how many of your team do you think would be with you because of the vision of Tribe, or because of you as the front man, if you will, the builder of it? I guess what I'm trying to say, if I'm listening to this as someone who's trying to build something, if I went out there and spooked it to my team that, look, this isn't my life, it just funds my lifestyle, and I'm going to create something else shortly, they would fear, Jules, that they would run the risk of losing that investment from their team, knowing that they won't
tell them that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, there's a girl over there, Olivia. It's her last day today, and she's been here for 3 years.
We're here for cake.
Get her in.
Get her in.
She's so she's been here for 3 years. She came in as an intern. She's now worked her way up. She's now in marketing automation. She's learned all of these programs, and now she's moving on to a bank. And she leaves here with such an incredible amount of experience, personal growth, but also a CV that just elevated her up and increased her value. And I reckon in this day and age, everyone complains about millennials, every 2 years they want to do something. I reckon every 2 years you should f*** off.
Yep.
Try something else. In your 20s, go. Try everything. Every 2 years, change. Don't even let yourself go past. Even if it's the best thing, move and try something different, and then get to 30 and then go, which one did I like?
Yeah.
And I reckon you should be moving. And to be honest, if there are companies that literally hire people to say, you're here for 2 years.
Yeah.
You're not here for life. You're going to come here, and that's the date you're going to leave. Right, and you're just going to give it your all.
That's right. Yeah,
and it's just a flip on the model.
Really clear expectation.
But I love it, and we're really transparent with this team. They, they're not worried about me leaving. God, they want me out of the way. It's a bloody bigger business than me.
Jules, with Tribe, one of my favourite sayings is simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. You really did simplify a really complicated business. How many businesses do you see out there that you think are just sort of overcomplicated, I should say, and trying to just simplify them? Is that something that sort of you get fascinated with?
Yeah, I do actually. I do. I particularly get it, even though our model is we've simplified a process, it's so complicated still.
Yeah.
Like I'm on a mission to simplify it so it's blindingly stupid. Like literally, you go to a web page and there's 3 squares with 3 pluses in it, and you just drag a photo in there, and you drag 3 photos in there, and then it gives you a whole list of others that are similar. You drag those so you're actually accurate. 3 photos, just goes to creators, and it just says content like this but celebrating our product, and that person comes back in 4 days and there's 200 pieces of content there. Like that, from everyday people that are just taking photos on their phone. Like that's how it should be. It should just be that simple. And those market forces exist. There is a demand for those. There is a visual language that doesn't need to be overcomplicated by text. There is someone who understands that visual language, which is just everyday consumers, and they all have the technology. So there's literally supply and demand, and these 3 tectonic plates are converging to create what I believe is just a multi-billion-dollar category, much bigger than influencer marketing, which is you've got brands that have never needed content more in their lives. They've gone from a TV ad or a print ad, like one asset to many, to personalization, digital advertising, which is where you need many assets to many. So we've solved the distribution of ads, and no one has a bloody idea how we create them. Like you can't go to a creative agency and say, I want 100 pieces of content. You just pay through the roof. So you've got that side, and then you've got everyday people that 1.2 billion have just graduated the University of Instagram. Like they just know how to craft magazine quality billboard size. They take 1 trillion photos a year on their iPhones, and all that content in everyone's iPhone right now is already wearing the watch, holding the pen, wearing the sunglasses, the Ray-Bans, drinking their favourite wine, like going to the sporting event, flying on Jetstar. All of our photos just naturally feature the products we use and love.
Yep.
And that's what I mean. Then you've got the third tectonic plate is just technology, the enabler. So you've got both sides, and that enabler, that technology just keeps getting better and better.
Yep.
So the supply has the tech, and now they have the talent. There's just no way that demand is not going to be serviced by that natural supply. So it's going to happen. I just hope we're around to be able to own it, to build the
And that's
framework.
the key, isn't it? How do you that is the
How
key.
do you stick around?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because that what I explained to you in 4 years' time will be like, yeah, duh.
Yeah, that's
Whereas I've been saying it for 4 years, and when I started saying it, people just couldn't get their head around it. At least now they can conceptualize it. By the time the world is wanting to do it, we have to have built the technology by then, knowing that we have to find investors that go, you know what, you're probably not going to do that well for a couple of years doing all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then once the swell lifts, you just want your surfboard in the right spot.
Yeah, so you're ready.
Yeah,
So
true.
that's where the saying "red is the new black." We need to be able to continually support that till it gets to the point
It's
where
frightening.
it is
And it's frightening for them, because most of the people with money don't necessarily have big imaginations, if I was honest. But,
They want a sure bet, don't they?
Yeah, and it's always risk, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So
Yeah, you don't want to be the sort of tech version of Bitcoin. It's like we want you to be gold that we can take to the bank. What do you think with all the platforms going video? They say literally in the most recent, I think the most recent estimate is like 18 months to 2 years, all of the platforms will be from LinkedIn to Facebook, which is already there, but very much video content only.
I'm not convinced. Absolutely video will increase, but I love photos.
Yeah.
Like I just love still things. I think it's easier to see.
Yep.
A video of someone just talking into the camera like you see on LinkedIn is not nearly as good as a really good photo, I reckon.
Yep.
And so Instagram, absolutely, there's ephemeral stuff, which is the explosion of stories in Snap, Facebook and Instagram. But don't be surprised if static images always convert as an ad. Like you can have a bit of motion in there, but I think it will be a majority of video, and it probably already is. Like, there's 500 million everyday active users in stories just on Instagram.
Yep.
So that's pretty compelling.
So do you see still photos as being a bit like now a vinyl record or a little bit like a book to Kindle? No?
There'll always be. I mean, look at all the still photos that they put in stories.
Yep.
There's something about crystallizing a moment in time.
Yep.
Right. And you can watch the video, but there's something about freezing it. I don't know. I love photography. I love video. But I love a good photo.
Yeah, I think photo, the other thing, you've looked at it, you got the story and you're kind of there, where a video, you might have to wait 3 minutes to find the final end of the video.
And I love a photo is the story. It's just right there, and I can see that story in a second. Problem with video is it takes an investment of time to get that same story.
And everyone's time poor.
Do you reckon there's an element of, when you read a book and then you see the movie, geez, that wasn't what I thought. Yeah, it's a bit like when you look at a still photo, you sort of, people actually like to create their own story around it to some extent. And I think, that's
I think
where
it's right.
think
You feel especially in those shows where people are going back through their genealogy and they're showing a photo of their great-great-grandfather, and you look and you go, I can just see in his eyes, I can just imagine what he's feeling there, and they start filling in the gap. Yeah. And now I know why I've got this creative bent. I came from a family of professors, but yet now I'm like him because I can see it in his eyes. That's the sort of value I think you're talking about in the static photo.
Well,
which we
will. When you think about right now I would have more, because I've always been in digital photography right at the start. I would have more photos and videos than I have life left to view them all. Like I would have tens of thousands, and I'm never going to go through it. Like I will die before I go back into those archives. And I still just I'm always capturing content on my phone, very rarely post it. I don't even know what I'm doing it for. I just feel like I'm capturing it and crystallizing it. Now, I don't know if you've seen the computer-generated content. There was one of Mark Zuckerberg the other day where they just take all the photos and his voice and basically they just had him talking to camera, just basically saying, I'm going to control the world and, like put any words in his mouth. And if you watch it, it's just literally Zuckerberg looking at a camera. It's exactly him, his expressions, his manner. And they've just captured that by putting in so much different content, right? Now, you can imagine there the technology, if they're already doing that now in 2019, the technology that our kids will have with us. So all of that data and that video footage and all my archives will sit there. They will have never met me, or their kids would never have met me. And now they can go in and literally have conversations, right? Conversations with their great-great-great-grandfather. There is more data, and they could say, I want to talk to him when he was my age at 18.
What was he feeling? What was he
thinking?
thinking?
And then at 18, I want to talk to him at 38. Who's my grandfather at 38? And it'll have me on stage. It'll have me doing a talk to the team here, and you'll just be able to piece that stuff together. I mean, they're already doing holograms.
Yep.
The hologram technology is already existing, where Gary Vee, who's, a great entrepreneur and a marketer, and a e-commerce wizard, these guys do talks now via hologram. And so he'll come out on stage and say, hey guys, and there he is in LA, and it will be beamed across, the globe in Japan, and he's talking. So you can, and they did that with Tupac, in which case you don't even need to be alive.
That's right.
Like it's a very, if you've got enough data, which we already do in our phones. Anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you all this.
No, but I think it really gets back to that sort of scenario where it's all heading and what does it all mean, and it's still going to always be, whether it's still photography, video, whatever, it still has to be attached to some emotive story that people compels you to want to either click on it or to review it a little bit further, I think is what I'm hearing.
We've taken up plenty of your time, Jules. You've been incredibly generous with your time. But just before we go, what are you most looking forward to in the future? What's the next? And when I say future, for reference, I don't sort of push out 5 to 10 years. I sort of talk 2 to 3 years. What are you actually seeing in that you can almost touch it, but you can't quite? What's Jules Lund see?
Well, I want to prove out that hypothesis that brands are willing to buy everyday pics and clips from anyone, right? So I want to prove out that the liquidity of that concept, and I reckon we're not far off from that. I want to see that. And I'll give you an example. Sitting over there is our CTO, Chief Technology Officer. We've got these content campaigns where, as I say, the brand doesn't even need the influencer to post it. In which case, why do they need to be an influencer? They don't. So he invited his brother-in-law, takes pics. He's a baker, his brother-in-law, and he made $825 on a Saturday afternoon. So the brand is happy, he's happy, we're happy because we get a good margin on that. And I reckon the consumer is as well, because rather than that brand using this social advertising that's just awkward, hammy crap, talking them like an idiot, it's actually real people in the ads, which converts better because, people are in social media because they want to socialize. So rather than seeing some model, they're seeing real people, which they lean into just a slight bit more sort of perform. So I'm excited by all of those elements coming together to something, and I just want to see it work. And then in the short term, what I'm excited by is I'm doing the New York Marathon. So I'm training at the moment.
November this year?
Yeah. I'm training at the moment. So that for my mental health is just unparalleled.
Is that something you've had as a goal for a long time, or is it more recent?
Yeah. Me and my best mate, who was the first other kid who came into that course as a 15-year-old, that first course that Reach ran, Paul and Jim had gone out to CBC after De La Salle that day, and this kid came in, Sammy Cav, and when I had the opportunity to do a radio show on Reach, and he was involved in Reach, he was studying criminology, and I brought him in, and we created Dash together, and then he moved on to become one of the most powerful people in radio. So he spent, it would have been at least 14 years with Hamish and Andy, developing that show. And so he's incredible. So him and he's my mentor. Since Jim passed, Sam, even though he's my same age, is just the smartest, most enlightened human I've ever met. And so if I get to run with him, through the week, it's an incredible investment. And my wife and I are going over with him, and we're going to have an awesome week.
That's brilliant.
And so you just celebrated 10 years of marriage and a significant milestone birthday, which we won't go into, so people can do their own math. But clearly, she's an important part of this journey as well. And the fact that you can share these experiences is really, not only does it fit in with the tribe model, but it fits in with who you are as a person as well, which I think is important.
So when I went overseas, so I was doing those, when I went over and I backpacked, I met her in Barcelona. And so that was 20 years ago. So she's the first girlfriend I've ever had. Only girlfriend I've ever had, and then married her, but she's been through it all, and long suffering life, because she's, like you guys know. I think I'm getting better at it, but when you're ambitious, you're a pain in the ass.
Yeah. How would your kids describe you?
Fun, luckily, because and I sort of I wrestle with what you were saying earlier.
Girls.
Two girls, 9 and 6. No fun, because when I'm with them, you can't things can go wrong or whatever. It should just be fun. I realise how precious time is for them, and it moves quick, and it should be a celebration. Everything should be a celebration. But you know what we're talking about there about quality time and quantity. Yeah. I'd like to believe there's such a thing as quality time, but with parenting, it's quantity. Yeah, it's quantity. I reckon they'd always choose quantity over. Absolutely. I think.
Yeah. At their ages too.
It's a good distinction, isn't
it? You can't. I don't think you can. I don't think I've tried to in the past, but I don't think it stacks up to justify it by saying no. Even though I'm not there a lot, when I am, it counts.
Well, Dad's home now, so if you need a challenge solved, I'll solve it. But quick, I'm on the clock.
So there's all. I mean, anyone our age, life's a challenge. There's from financial pressures to the time you finally got the time to take a big swing. So you take big gambles financially, exploit yourself, relationships. You're not seeing your friends anymore. Mental health goes down. Your actual physical health can go down. You only need your parents have just turned into from being a support to turning into pains in the ass as they get more eccentric and take more time rather than give it. There's I reckon in your sort of 35 to 50 is a with young kids, I look at all my friends, and that's why the Wayne Swash thing, Swash, how do you say it?
Schwass, you're right.
That managing mental health is just such a critical part. And as Sammy Cab said, the quality of life is all relative to the quality of your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you've got it all, if you're just struggling internally.
So true.
There's no point being the richest, or the old saying is there's no point being the richest person in the graveyard, and there's no point earning a ton of coin and going home and sharing it with a pet rock because your family goes, I think you love that business more than you love us. So it is that eternal civil war that we all sort of struggle from time to time. But I'm pretty confident today that Jules has given you, from his perspective anyway, enough gems there, and as you like to call them, Pete, the life hacks to bring something into your world that's going to make a significant difference. That's why we do this podcast. We want to connect with absolute achievers in all spaces, but also learn not so much what they do, but their organising principles around how they've done it. I think if I've heard anything in this interview, you're hearing about the power of mentorship, the ability to give back to others, and the ability to paint a picture for someone who can only see a blank canvas and can't even see the framework, let alone understanding this vision you've got for them. But Jules had it from an amazing inspirational mentor, and he's continued it on with his best friend. And it's kind of how I think we'd all like to believe it to be. There's no successful hermits, Pete. We need other people to help us get to where we want to get to.
And clear messaging about always challenging yourself, always looking for something else. If you're not settled, go again. I love that. You're not a tree. You're not stuck. So you can actually move around. You can change things. You can adapt and do different things in your life to basically affect a different result. So, Jules, you've been incredibly valuable with your time. As I said, it's just so awesome to be recording here in the in Tribe headquarters, overlooking the magnificent Albert Park Lake out there.
We are. Next episode, we're going to be doing it from New York, and Jules is funding us over there. So we're very thrilled to bring this one to you.
And also next episode, we'll talk about your stint on Dancing on the Ice.
Oh, yeah.
How did we let that not get in there?
It's a visual. It's a real visual example.
Yeah, but I think the last thing I just wanted to say, Pete, when you hear Jules, you hear that quote that's so wonderful, which is, if you make easy decisions, you're going to end up probably with a hard life. But if you make some hard decisions early, you're going to end up with an easy life. And so he's making the hard decisions, paying the price now, and obviously understanding that there will be a day where that pays back in dividends. And no matter whether it's today, tomorrow, next decade, there's going to be a great, exciting journey along the way. And so, Jules, thank you for sharing some of your exciting journey with our listeners. Thank you for spending so much time with us today, because we know that this is a valuable time for you.
Really enjoyed it.
And the good news for everybody listening is, if you think, we'll just worry about that one later, I can tell you Jules is not doing podcasting anymore because his requests far outweigh the 168 hours in the week. He gets asked to do it more regularly than not. So if you've enjoyed this, as always, we ask you to do two things only. Number one, do give us some feedback so we know we are on the right track. Number two, please share it with your tribe to make sure that these types of principles are going to have a bigger flow. And if you want to learn more about tribe, certainly just Google it. If you want to know more about Reach, and the Reach Foundation is something that we are very aware of, Pete and I. And when Pete sort of said there's a chance that we could get Jules Lund and how that could all work, he was pretty excited to bring this message to everybody, Jules. So on behalf of Peter and myself, certainly we're in front of it, we're enjoying it. But for our listeners, we do want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you, and for you for sharing so givingly. And we do have to thank Vivian Wright for that as well. But thank you for
Jules,
sharing so much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
We trust you enjoyed listening to Voices of Value, a shared conversation between Rik Rushton and Peter Kakos. Their views are not necessarily those of the wider world, but they should be. If you're keen to enhance the quality of your life even further in the future, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or your preferred podcast source. Our website is voicesofvaluepodcast.com, and we welcome both your feedback and ratings on the content we provide. Join the conversation again next week when Peter and Rik continue the search for truth, justice, and the value-added way.